Hey guys, tonight we drift into something gentle, something quiet, something that has shaped the world for thousands of years without making a sound. Before we begin, I want you to settle in. Take a slow breath in and let it go. Let your shoulders soften. Let the day fall away behind you. Because tonight, we are starting a journey into the story of debt. Not the stressful kind you hear about in the news, not the kind that keeps people awake at night, but the calm, historical kind that has woven itself through human life like a soft, invisible thread. Before we get fully comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you feel connected to what I create here. Only if you truly enjoy these soft, quiet stories that help you let go of the world for a little while. And if you can, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I love seeing people joining in from every corner of the world, all settling down together for a peaceful moment. Now do something simple for me. Close your eyes, both of them. Let them rest. If you are watching on your phone, set it down gently beside you. If you are listening on a laptop, lower the screen or place it somewhere. It won't distract you. Let the light dim. Let the room settle. Let this become a space just for you. Listen to my voice. Nothing else matters right now. You are safe. You are warm. You are here with me. And we are about to drift into a story that moves slowly, like a soft tide. A story without sharp edges or heavy emotions. Just a quiet exploration of how humans, all across time, created ways to borrow, to trade, to promise, to trust, and to build connections that would eventually shape entire civilizations. Tonight's journey is called The Debt That Never Sleeps. But don't worry, this story will not make your heart race or your mind spin. It is not about panic or crisis. It is about understanding. It is about watching history unfold gently, like pages turning in a book you read before bed. A calm teacher guiding you through a world that once felt complicated, but now feels soft and almost comforting. So lie down, or sit back, or curl into whatever position feels right. Feel the weight of your blanket. Feel the softness of your pillow. Let the air around you settle into a gentle hush. If there is a fan running, let that hum blend with my voice. If the room is quiet, let the silence wrap around you like a light blanket. In this peaceful state, we are going to look at something that has always existed in the background of human life. Debt. A word that sounds heavy in the daytime, but becomes something entirely different when we look at it slowly, with kindness, with curiosity. It becomes a story of connection, a story of trust, a story of how people, long before us, found ways to build relationships, to help one another, and sometimes to tie their futures together through promises of what would come later. This is not a lecture. This is not a documentary. This is a gentle bedtime journey through history. A soft story you can drift in and out of without missing anything important. If you fall asleep in the middle, that is perfectly fine. In fact, that is the goal. So close your eyes a little tighter. Let your breathing slow. Let your mind get ready for a long, calm walk through the past, following the quiet footsteps of debt as it moves through ancient villages, early markets, old kingdoms, growing cities, and eventually the world we know today. Whenever you are ready, we will begin. Just keep your eyes closed, keep your breathing soft, let yourself float, and let me guide you gently into the first chapter of tonight's journey. Chapter 1. The first promises of the ancient world. With your eyes still closed, let your breathing stay easy and slow. Imagine yourself floating gently into the past, not rushing, not pushing, just drifting backward through time as if carried by a soft current. Tonight, We start far away from the modern world, long before banks, long before printed money, and long before anyone wrote down the word debt. We begin in a place where everything was simple, quiet, and guided by the rhythm of nature. Picture a small village, one without tall buildings or paved roads, just open land, warm earth, and a cluster of homes made from mud, straw, or whatever the land offered. People move slowly here. There is no rush, no clocks, no schedules. The day follows the sun, and the night follows the stars. This is the world in which debt was born, not through greed or pressure, but through something much gentler, something that feels almost human at its core. The idea of helping someone today, trusting that one day, in some peaceful future, they will help you too. In this small village, everyone knows everyone. Children grow up side by side. Families gather around fires. People work together, share food together, and rest together. And because life can be unpredictable, sometimes someone needs a little help. Maybe a family's harvest was smaller than usual. Maybe a hunter returned empty-handed. Maybe someone fell ill and could not work for a few days. When this happened, neighbors stepped in, not with contracts, not with signatures, just with trust. You can almost hear the calm voices of these early people, soft, gentle, relaxed. A neighbor handing over a handful of grain, saying something like, "Here, take this for now, and when your fields are healthy again, you can return the favor. No pressure, no rush, just a quiet understanding. A bond formed through kindness." What these early humans may not have realized is that they were creating the first versions of debt, but theirs was not a burden. It was not an obligation that sat heavy on the mind. It was a promise wrapped in goodwill, a simple, peaceful exchange that helped the village survive and grow. As you imagine this, let your body sink a little deeper into comfort, knowing that the earliest form of debt was really just a way for humans to care for each other. As time passed, these simple exchanges became part of everyday life. A borrowed tool, a shared basket of fruit, a neighbor helping repair a roof after a storm. Each gesture became part of a gentle network of promises. People remembered favors not with worry, but with warmth, because helping each other created harmony, and harmony created peace. Now imagine the village growing slowly. New families arrive, children become adults, and with more people, the system of trust becomes a little more complex. Still soft, still human, but now it carries more weight. People start to keep mental notes of who has given what, not to pressure anyone, but to maintain balance. Balance kept life smooth. Balance kept everyone connected. Eventually, as these early communities evolved, they began using objects to track these promises. Nothing fancy. Maybe a carved stick, maybe a marked stone, maybe a string with knots tied into it. These were the first quiet tools of accounting. They were not used to demand repayment. They simply helped people remember in a world without writing. A simple reminder of a kindness done or a kindness owed. Picture someone sitting by a fire, carving a small line into a piece of wood. The motion slow, the sound soft, the meaning gentle. One day, this line would be matched by another when the favor was returned. This was the earliest version of a ledger. But unlike modern ledgers full of numbers and stress, this one felt warm and human. It was made with the intention of fairness, kindness, and trust. As you visualize this, allow your breathing to stay steady and relaxed. Let the calmness of that simple world flow into your own space. In those days, debt was not feared. It was respected. It lived in harmony with daily life. It reminded people that they were not alone, that they could rely on each other, and that they belong to a wider web of support. Now drift a little further back in time, to some of the earliest known civilizations, places like Mesopotamia, where the first cities began to rise. Life became slightly more organized here, though still slow by our standards. People gathered in open markets. Farmers brought their grain, shepherds brought wool, potters brought bowls shaped by hand. And once again, the idea of exchanging favors and promises became part of the rhythm of life. In these early markets, people often traded without using coins. Instead, they relied on agreed value. A bag of grain might be worth a jar of oil. A woolen cloth might be worth a few baskets of vegetables. But if someone did not have their part of the exchange ready, they simply promised to provide it later. That gentle promise, spoken calmly, became debt. But even then, it was still simple, still human, still soft. Priests or scribes in these early cities sometimes helped record these promises on small clay tablets. Imagine the sound of a wooden stylus pressing slowly into soft clay. Tap, tap, tap. Each mark representing a future exchange. A quiet moment captured in the earth, destined to be baked and preserved for thousands of years. These tablets were never meant to scare people. They were tools to help communities stay balanced. Everyone understood that life could be unpredictable. Crops failed. Weather changed. Animals got sick. Debt was not a punishment. It was a way to support each other through uncertain times. As you picture this gentle world, let your thoughts soften. Let your mind drift like a feather. Debt was not a shadow. It was a bridge, a connection from one person to another, a promise that tomorrow would come, and with it, a chance to return the kindness that had been given. This was the beginning of the debt that never sleeps, not because it was restless or demanding, but because it quietly followed humans through every moment of life, always present, always evolving, always shaping the way people interacted, a silent companion to humanity. And now, still with your eyes closed, let the first chapter rest in your mind like a soft blanket, a quiet beginning, a peaceful foundation, the ancient world teaching us that debt once began as kindness, trust, and gentle understanding. Chapter 2. Clay tablets, quiet temples, and the first ledgers. Keep your eyes closed and let your breathing stay slow and relaxed. As we move into the second chapter of our gentle journey, imagine yourself drifting forward just a little from the simple villages of the past. Life is becoming a bit more organized now. People are building larger homes, forming early towns, and gathering in places that would one day become cities. But even as their world becomes more structured, their days still move at a peaceful pace. Nothing is rushed, nothing is forced, and the story of debt remains calm and steady, just like the rhythm of their lives. Now picture a world of warm clay, tall reeds, and slow rivers. A world where people lived near wide floodplains and fertile soil. This is ancient Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization. But tonight, we are not here to learn dates or memorize facts. We are here to walk through this world gently, as if we are half dreaming, exploring the soft corners of history without pressure or hurry. Imagine the early morning light spreading across the river. The air feels warm and still. People begin their day quietly, tending to fields, shaping pottery, weaving cloth, or preparing offerings for the local temple. Everything has a calm rhythm, and within this slow, predictable routine, the concept of debt begins to take on a slightly new shape. In Mesopotamia, temples were more than places of worship. They were peaceful hubs where people gathered, shared food, and even stored grain together for the community. Think of them like early community centers. They were places of trust, places where people knew they could turn if they needed help. And because the temples managed resources, they also became the keepers of early records of debt. Now imagine a scribe sitting quietly inside one of these temples. It is dim inside, with only a few beams of sunlight entering through small openings in the walls. The scribe sits cross-legged with a slab of soft clay on their lap. They hold a thin reed stylus, and with slow, careful movements, they press small wedge-shaped marks into the clay. Each mark is deliberate and calm. These marks are not numbers as we know them today. They are tiny symbols representing promises. A farmer borrowing grain until the next harvest. A shepherd agreeing to provide wool at a later time. A potter promising to deliver bowls once they are finished. These promises were recorded not to intimidate anyone, but simply to help everyone remember. Life was busy, even in the ancient world, and memory alone could not hold every detail. The clay tablets became gentle reminders of ongoing relationships and exchanges. The sound of the stylus tapping into clay is soft and steady. Tap, tap, tap. A sound you might almost fall asleep to. Imagine the scribe moving slowly, patiently, focused on each gentle stroke. These early accountants were not chasing profit or pressure. They were helping their community stay balanced, fair, and peaceful. And in this world, debt was still deeply human. It was still tied to trust. People depended on the temple not as a ruler, but as a caretaker. If a family had a bad harvest, the temple lent them grain, not because of strict rules, but because the community survived by supporting one another. The debt recorded on the clay tablet was simply a promise that once the family recovered, they would replenish the communal storehouse so that someone else in need could be helped in the future. You can almost see the shelves of these small clay tablets drying in the warm air, each one holding a quiet promise, each one representing cooperation, each one connecting people through kindness rather than fear. Another gentle element of Mesopotamian life was the use of barley as a form of currency. Instead of coins, people measured value in handfuls or sacks of barley. And because barley could be grown, shared, stored, or borrowed, it naturally became woven into the exchange system. This made debt easier to understand. If someone borrowed barley, they would one day repay barley. Simple, clear, and manageable. Now imagine walking through an early market. The sun overhead is warm, but the air moves slowly, carrying the sounds of people greeting one another in friendly tones. There are no loud sales pitches, no intense bargaining, just calm conversations. A farmer offers onions. A fisherman offers dried fish. A clothmaker displays soft, hand-woven fabric. Sometimes a person does not have what they need at the moment, but instead of creating tension, this leads to a gentle agreement. Something like, "I will bring you the wool when the sheep are sheared," or "I will repay you after the next harvest." And because the community is small and trust is strong, no one worries too much about whether the promise will be kept. Life moves slowly, and with that slowness comes stability. This peaceful environment is one of the reasons ancient debt systems were able to grow. People trusted the temple, trusted the scribes, trusted the clay tablets, and most importantly, trusted each other. This trust allowed their society to flourish without fear, because debt was not a threat. It was simply a tool for managing time. Imagine a farmer receiving help during a hard season. The scribe records the borrowed grain on a clay tablet, and the farmer carries it home with gratitude rather than stress. Months later, when the next harvest is plentiful, The farmer returns to the temple with more grain than they borrowed, smiling, relieved, proud to give back. The tablet is wiped clean, the promise fulfilled, balance restored. In many cases, repaying debt was a moment of celebration, not tension, a sign that life had returned to normal, a sign that hard times had passed. And because these exchanges kept the community stable, people felt connected. They belonged not just to a place, but to one another. Let your breathing soften a little more as you imagine the warmth of this ancient world. A time when debt, instead of being a burden, created bonds. A time when the first written records of debt were gentle marks in clay. Nothing scary, nothing overwhelming. Just the earliest form of bookkeeping, created to make life easier. Now picture the scribe once more. The day is ending. The sun lowers behind the walls of the city. The clay tablets are set aside to dry overnight. The scribe stretches, stands slowly, and walks out of the temple into the cool evening air. People head home. Fires are lit. The smell of cooked grain drifts through the streets, and somewhere in the background, a soft breeze moves through the reeds along the river. Debt never slept, but not because it haunted people. It stayed awake because life kept flowing, crops kept growing, families kept trading, and the temples kept gently guiding the community, ensuring that every promise made would one day return as a promise kept. With your eyes still closed, let this chapter rest gently in your mind. Let it feel warm and steady, like the slow drying of clay in the sun. A calm and quiet step in the long journey of human history. Chapter 3. The birth of money and the gentle expansion of debt. Keep your eyes closed and let your body stay relaxed and heavy, as if you are slowly sinking into your bed or your pillow. Our journey continues, drifting forward through history like a quiet breeze. We have left behind the clay tablets and the peaceful temples of Mesopotamia, and now we float into a world that is growing bigger, busier, and more connected. But don't worry, we are not stepping into chaos. We are stepping into another chapter of calm discovery, watching from a safe and peaceful distance as humans gently reshape the idea of debt. Imagine time moving like a soft wave, carrying us into early civilizations across the world. Some people live among mountains, others near rivers, some in forests, some in open plains. Life looks different from place to place, but one thing remains the same. People still trade, people still borrow, people still promise to return favors. Debt continues to weave its quiet thread through human life, linking one day to another and one person to another. Now picture a small village along a winding river. It could be in early China, early India, or another early civilization. The details change, but the feeling stays familiar. People work in the fields, children laugh, smoke rises slowly from clay ovens. Traders arrive carrying baskets or wagons filled with items from faraway places. As life becomes more connected, people start to realize that keeping track of value through promises alone can become challenging. In villages, everyone knows each other. But in growing towns, people meet strangers. They trade with travelers. They exchange goods with people they may never see again. Promises of future repayment work well among neighbors, but between strangers, something more is needed. Something simple, something small enough to carry, something reliable. This, gently and quietly, is where money begins to appear. The earliest forms of money were not always coins or paper. In many places, people used things that everyone agreed were valuable. Imagine small pieces of metal, smooth shells from distant seas, polished stones, little objects that held meaning and beauty. People exchanged them because they were easy to carry and easy to measure. And with this new tool, debt began to shift. It became a little more organized, a little more structured, while still holding on to its gentle origins in trust. Picture a merchant arriving in a busy market for the first time. Instead of agreeing to repay someone months later, the merchant hands over a small piece of metal or a polished shell. The person receiving it knows it has value. They know they can give it to someone else later. Suddenly, debt becomes a bit more flexible, a bit easier to manage. Instead of waiting for the next harvest or the next season, people can use money to settle promises whenever needed. But even as money emerges, debt does not disappear. It simply becomes calmer and more dependable. If someone borrows money, they can repay money. If someone borrows grain, they can repay with money. It becomes a soft bridge between different worlds and different goods. Now imagine early coins beginning to appear in places like Lydia, China, and India. They are small, round, and simple. Some have little symbols pressed into them. The stamping is done by hand, slowly and carefully. Each coin carrying the identity of the ruler or the village that created it. People start to feel a sense of security with coins. They do not spoil like grain. They do not break like pottery. They last. They travel. They carry value quietly in their small metal bodies. And with the arrival of coins, people start to record money debts the way they once recorded barley debts. A borrowed coin, a promised repayment, a small mark in a ledger. But the tone remains calm. Debt is still about helping people get through their days. It still exists because life can be unpredictable, and money simply becomes a tool to make these exchanges smoother. Now imagine standing in one of the earliest markets that used coins. The sun is bright overhead, but the air feels warm and welcoming. People move slowly from stall to stall. A farmer sells vegetables. A potter sells simple cups. A weaver displays a roll of cloth. A traveler from another region brings items no one has seen before, and the people gather to admire them. Coins pass gently from hand to hand. They make a soft, clinking sound, tiny and unimposing. In this calm exchange, debt grows more flexible. Instead of promising to bring wool in a future season, someone can borrow a few coins today and repay them once they have finished selling their vegetables. The rhythm becomes smoother, and people feel less pressure. Money allows debt to breathe. Let your breathing stay steady as you imagine this world. A world where money is new and exciting, but not stressful. A world where borrowing and lending feel peaceful. People do not think of debt as a burden. They think of it as a pathway to opportunity, a way to solve small problems, a way to get through the day. Now imagine the early shopkeepers of this time. They often kept simple ledgers, nothing more than wooden boards with marks, or small parchment sheets with charcoal writing. They recorded who borrowed what and when they were expected to return it. These shopkeepers were often known and trusted members of the community. People saw them as calm, steady, reliable. They kept track of debt not to punish anyone, but to help the community stay organized. Merchants sometimes borrowed money to travel. Farmers borrowed seed for planting season. Craftsmen borrowed metal or tools to keep their work going. Debt moved through the town like a gentle breeze, touching each family in small, manageable ways. And as civilizations grew, rulers began to understand how important debt had become. Kings and emperors realized that debts, both personal and communal, helped their societies remain stable. Some even forgave large debts during difficult years, allowing families to start fresh. These forgiving moments were often celebrated with quiet relief. People gathered together, grateful for the chance to reset their lives. Now imagine being in one of those communities. The ruler announces that old debts are wiped clean. People breathe out softly. They smile. They return home feeling lighter, feeling hopeful. This tradition appears in many ancient societies, showing that debt was never meant to be a heavy chain. It was meant to support people, not overwhelm them. As you hold this peaceful image in your mind, let your body relax a little more. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your jaw soften. Let the calmness of ancient markets and early coins spread through your thoughts. In this world, debt continues to grow, yet it remains gentle. It remains a quiet companion to human life, adapting to new tools and new people without losing its original purpose. The birth of money did not erase trust. It simply offered a new way for people to express that trust. And as humanity stepped into this new chapter, the story of debt continued to evolve with a soft, steady rhythm, as predictable and calming as a heartbeat. Chapter 4: Kings, Kingdoms, and the Calm Weight of National Promises. Keep your eyes closed and let your breathing deepen just a little. As we move into this next chapter, imagine time widening around us. The world is no longer just small villages or early markets. It is filled with kingdoms now, larger communities, broader horizons. But even though life is becoming grander, the tone of our journey stays soft and relaxed. We are not rushing through history. We are floating through it, letting each moment drift by like a quiet cloud. Picture the early empires forming one by one. Places where kings ruled from stone palaces and where communities grew around large plazas, temples, and open markets. These were worlds full of color and sound, yet still balanced by a slow rhythm shaped by the rising and setting of the sun. As kingdoms began to grow, they took on responsibilities that villages and small towns never had before. They built roads, they managed armies, they supported artisans and farmers, they traded with neighbors near and far, and to keep all this moving smoothly, rulers needed resources, not just goods, not just grain, but something more stable, something that could move across great distances and still hold value. This is where the idea of national debt begins, but do not imagine it as something heavy or frightening. In the early days, national debt was simply an extension of the same trust and promise that began between neighbors in small villages. The scale became larger, but the heart remained the same. It was still about people helping one another through the time. Imagine a ruler standing quietly with advisors in a stone hall. They are not rushing. They are not panicked. They are simply discussing how to build a new irrigation system or how to supply farmers during a dry season. They talk about borrowing resources from wealthy merchants or from the temple storehouses. In return, they promise future grain, future taxes, or future trade benefits. These agreements were not loud declarations. They were calm negotiations, spoken in measured tones. In many civilizations, temples or palaces became central places for lending and borrowing. Just like the early village storehouses, these larger institutions kept track of promises made by the state. Skilled scribes wrote down the details on parchment, clay, or woven scrolls. And these scribes worked slowly, carefully, ensuring that each record was clear and fair. Picture a scribe leaning over a long wooden table, dipping a reed or brush into ink. The strokes are gentle, the writing is steady. Each document captures a promise that stretches from the present into the future. A promise that the kingdom will repay what it owes when the time is right. Even these early national debts were built on trust. People believed in the stability of their rulers and their land, just as they once believed in their neighbors. Now imagine standing in a bustling marketplace within one of these early kingdoms. Traders from distant regions gather with spices, fabrics, metals, and other treasures. These traders lend money to the kingdom, with the understanding that repayment will come when the next harvest arrives, or when the next trade caravan returns. They trust the promise not because it is forced upon them, but because the system works. They have seen it before. They have watched debt flow in and out like a gentle tide. This trust allowed kingdoms to grow. Roads were built because someone lent materials. Temple walls were repaired because someone lent labor. Water systems were expanded because someone provided tools. And all of these promises, large and small, were recorded with quiet care. Now imagine a king calling for a census or a tax collection. Families gather calmly in open squares. They bring goods or coins to fulfill their tax obligations. Some pay early, some pay later. Some ask for time because their crops were affected by weather or illness. And in many kingdoms, rulers allowed grace periods. They understood that life was unpredictable. They knew debt could not be repaid if people were struggling. Kindness kept communities strong. Some civilizations even had traditions where debts were forgiven at the start of a new king's reign or during major festivals. These events were peaceful, hopeful moments. Families celebrated quietly, knowing they could start fresh. Merchants welcomed new opportunities. Farmers felt relieved, and the kingdom felt lighter, as if a gentle wind had swept through, clearing away old burdens. Let yourself imagine the feeling of being part of such a moment. A quiet announcement, a soft wave of relief, smiles shared, doors opening, a sense of balance returning. This shows us once again that debt, even on a national level, was not always about pressure. It was often about compassion and stability. As kingdoms expanded, they also became more organized. They established treasuries, places where resources were stored and managed. The treasurers, much like village leaders of earlier times, kept ledgers with great care. They tracked what the kingdom owed, to whom, and under what conditions. But these records were not created with fear. They were simply part of keeping the community in harmony. Picture a treasury room. Cool, quiet stone walls, soft light filtering in, shelves lined with jars of grain, baskets of herbs, stacks of tablets, and bundles of parchment. The air smells faintly of ink, clay, and earth. A treasurer sits at a wooden table, reviewing the kingdom's promises. As they work, they feel a sense of responsibility, not pressure. They know their role helps the entire land remain stable. And as trade networks expanded between kingdoms, debt followed along calmly. Rulers borrowed from one another for festivals, for building projects, or for unexpected needs. These agreements helped create peaceful bonds between distant lands. Debt became a form of diplomacy, a way to show trust, a way to strengthen relationships. Imagine two rulers meeting in a quiet courtyard, their voices low, their gestures calm. One offers resources, the other promises repayment after the next caravan arrives. They shake hands or exchange gifts. Their agreement is a bridge between nations, a peaceful thread woven into the fabric of their world. As you picture this scene, let your thoughts drift like a gentle stream. The world is evolving, but the emotional core of debt remains warm and steady. It is still about people helping each other across time. Still about cooperation. Still about trust. Debt becomes national only because communities became larger. but its purpose remains the same as in the small villages of the past. It helps people survive. It helps them grow. It helps them create a future together. Now breathe softly as you imagine the kingdom at dusk. The sun setting behind distant hills, merchants closing their stalls, children playing in the fading light, the smell of cooking fires drifting through the air. Somewhere within the palace walls, the kingdom's ledger rests quietly, holding its gentle collection of promises. Debt never sleeps because life never pauses. But in these early kingdoms, debt lived peacefully beside the people, helping them move through good seasons and difficult ones with balance and understanding. Chapter 5. When empires grew quietly on borrowed time. Before we start, make sure your eyes are still closed. Let your shoulders sink a little deeper into whatever surface is holding you. Feel the softness of the moment settle around you like a warm blanket. Tonight, we drift forward into a time when the world grew larger than kingdoms. This is the age of empires, built slowly, not in a rush, but across centuries, with patience and the steady rhythm of human ambition. Imagine standing at the edge of an ancient empire, with wide roads stretching across open fields and forests. These roads are smooth enough for caravans and sturdy enough for soldiers, but tonight they are completely empty, resting in the quiet glow of a setting sun. Empires, even in their grandest moments, spend most of their days in calm routines. Farmers tending crops, artisans shaping tools, scholars copying manuscripts in peaceful courtyards, and somewhere behind the scenes, debt continued flowing quietly, supporting the massive structure from within. When an empire grows, its needs grow with it. More roads, more storage for food, more networks connecting distant regions, and all of these projects required something familiar. Resources borrowed from the future. Promises made with a gentle confidence that the seasons would be kind, the harvest steady, and the trade route safe. Empires had treasuries far larger than any kingdom before them. These were places where gold coins, bronze tokens, grain, and written records were stored together. But even in these grand halls, the atmosphere was surprisingly calm. Scribes, accountants, and advisors worked in quiet concentration, making sure every promise was recorded properly. Their job was not to pressure or intimidate anyone. Their job was simply to keep the system balanced. Picture one of these treasury rooms. Soft light from oil lamps, shadows stretching across patterned floors, shelves holding scrolls tied with cloth ribbons. In the corner, a scribe sits cross-legged, writing patiently. They are recording a new loan the empire has taken to repair an aqueduct or support a distant province recovering from a flood. The scribe moves slowly, with steady breath, knowing that these details matter. Each promise shapes the future of the empire. As the empire expands across mountains, deserts, and rivers, new regions join its circle of trust. Some bring goods, some offer knowledge, others contribute labor or specialized skills. And in return, the empire promises protection, food during hard seasons, or access to trade networks that stretch farther than ever before. Debt is simply the quiet exchange that keeps all of this moving smoothly. When you imagine an empire, you might picture battles or dramatic events, but most of history is not dramatic. It is ordinary, slow, steady. Empires survive not because of their strength alone, but because people believed in their promises. Farmers believed the harvest would come. Merchants believed the roads would remain open. Rulers believed that the future would repay what the present needed. Sit with that thought for a moment. Debt in an empire was not rooted in fear. It was rooted in confidence. a calm certainty that tomorrow could support today. Now imagine a caravan traveling across one of these long imperial roads, horses moving at an easy pace, wagons carrying goods wrapped in cloth, merchants resting beneath patches of shade. These caravans often lent money to the empire, knowing that repaying the debt was part of keeping trade flowing. Their trust was not naive. It was informed by generations of peaceful cooperation. Sometimes the empire borrowed grain to support soldiers stationed far away. Sometimes it borrowed metals to mint new coins. Sometimes it borrowed ships from coastal traders to expand maritime routes. And in every case, these promises were recorded carefully and resolved slowly over time. Debt woven into an empire was like irrigation channels carrying water across vast farmland. Not too fast, not too forceful, just steady enough to nourish the land without overwhelming it. Now imagine a gentle festival taking place in the capital city. Lanterns glowing softly, musicians playing instruments that echo through open plazas, families walking together, enjoying the peacefulness of the evening. And within this moment, imagine imperial officials quietly announcing a repayment of debt, or perhaps a reduction of obligations for certain communities after a difficult season. These small gestures built trust, just as much as the roads or aqueducts did. Empires were at their strongest when they treated debt with fairness and patience, when everyone felt supported, when everyone felt seen. Of course, empires sometimes borrowed more than they needed. Sometimes their confidence drifted too far from reality. But even in those moments, the story was rarely sudden or chaotic. Debt troubles unfolded slowly, like shadows lengthening across a quiet courtyard. People adapted, adjusted, found new ways to cooperate. Debt, after all, had always been part of life, so its presence never felt shocking. As you listen now, let your mind drift to one more scene. A scholar seated beneath a shaded portico, writing a history of the empire. Their voice is soft as they dictate. They speak of the roads, the markets, the temples, and the distant provinces. But they also speak of the careful financial systems that held everything together. They acknowledge debt as a steady companion, always there, always moving quietly behind the scenes. This scholar is calm, their breath slow, their words thoughtful. And as they write, it becomes clear that the empire's story is not a story of conquest. It is a story of cooperation, a story of shared effort, a story of promises stretching gently across generations. Debt becomes almost like time itself, something that connects the past, the present, and the future in a soft, continuous line. Take a slow breath here. Let your chest rise and fall easily. Let your body settle deeper into stillness. Chapter 6. The quiet birth of banks and the soft pulse of lending. Before we begin, Chapter 6, take a moment to relax your face. Let your eyelids rest a little heavier. Feel the quiet around you settle into something warm and steady. You are safe here, listening to a slow story meant to guide you deeper into rest. Let my voice carry you gently, like a small boat floating on calm water. Tonight, we move into a chapter of history that feels familiar, yet distant. This is the time when banks began to appear, not as the towering buildings we know today, but as humble places where trust was stored as carefully as coins. Think of this moment as the world taking a gentle step toward the systems we live with now. Nothing sudden, nothing rushed, just slow, natural change. Imagine a small, peaceful town with smooth stone streets and sunlit shops lining each side. In the center of this town sits a modest building, neither large nor fancy. Inside, it smells faintly of ink, parchment, and warm clay. This is an early bank, a place where merchants, farmers, and travelers come not for wealth itself, but for safety, stability, and the quiet comfort of knowing their future is recorded with care. There were no flashing signs, no crowds pushing in and out. People entered calmly, greeted by a clerk who worked with a soft voice and steady hands. Early banks were more like community guardians than financial giants. Their purpose was simple: to keep items safe, to record promises, to lend support when needed. Take a moment to picture the clerk. A gentle face, sleeves rolled back, a pen resting between fingers worn by hours of slow writing. They are copying numbers into a ledger, not with pressure but with patience. Each line marks the beginning or continuation of a story. Someone has saved grain, someone has deposited coins, someone else is asking for a small loan to repair a cart or buy seeds for next season. The clerk does not judge. They simply write what is true. In these early banks, trust was not cold or mechanical. It was personal. The clerk knew the families who came through the door. They knew who needed extra time to repay. They understood which debts came from hardship and which came from opportunity. As you imagine this scene, keep your breathing soft and even. Let yourself drift into the rhythm of the clerk's pen moving across the page. Slow, steady, intentional. These early banks came from a simple idea: that keeping wealth in one place was safer for everyone, that community members could help each other by pooling resources, and that borrowing should be available not only to the wealthy, but to anyone with a dream, a need, or a plan. Farmers borrowed seeds, builders borrowed tools, traders borrowed money to purchase goods before they began long journeys across mountains and seas. And each loan was just a quiet promise: I will help you now, and one day, when you are able, you will help me in return. This simple exchange created something powerful and peaceful. It allowed economies to breathe, to grow slowly, to recover from difficult seasons without breaking. Debt within these early banks became more organized, but it remained gentle. It stayed rooted in the same principle we have followed through every chapter so far: cooperation. Now imagine a town gathering on a mild afternoon. People gather near the center square for a market day. You hear faint conversation, soft laughter, and the calm clinking of goods changing hands. In the background, the early bank stands quietly, almost unnoticed, but everyone knows it is there, supporting the flow of daily life. It is the quiet heart of the community. Over time, as villages grew into towns and towns became cities, these small banks evolved. They hired more clerks. They built sturdier rooms. They organized ledgers more carefully. But their purpose remained the same: to keep promises safe. Later, larger banks formed partnerships with merchants who traveled across continents. Ships carrying spices, fabrics, metals, and stories anchored in distant ports. These traders often needed funds before they began their journeys. Banks would lend them the resources, trusting that the voyage would succeed. And even if the journey took months or years, the bank would wait calmly for repayment. Debt in this era had patience built into it. Picture a merchant seated in a quiet bank office. They explain their plan, the route they will take, the goods they hope to trade, the risks they are aware of. The banker listens closely, nodding slowly. There is no rush, no pressure, just two people discussing the future with measured voices. The banker eventually agrees to the loan. They do not know exactly what will happen, but they know the merchant is honest, and the journey is worth supporting. This moment captured the essence of early finance: human trust, human cooperation, human hope. Later still, banks learned to give people something new: a written note that represented money, a small slip of paper with a promise on it. You could trade the note without carrying heavy coins. It made life easier, more peaceful, more secure. It also made debt easier to track and repay. But even this advancement came slowly. No big announcements, no sudden adoption, just a gentle shift over generations, until people became comfortable exchanging promises instead of metal. Let your mind sit on that thought for a moment. A promise becoming as valuable as a coin. A promise becoming something you can carry in your pocket. A promise turning into a quiet symbol of trust between strangers who may never meet. As banks grew, so did the idea that debt could support dreams, not just emergencies. Debt helped someone open a shop, build a home, start a trade route, educate a child, expand a business. So debt was no longer just a tool for surviving hard times. It became a tool for building soft, hopeful futures. Let yourself imagine a young couple entering a bank for the first time. They speak softly to the clerk. They share their plan to build a small home near the river. The clerk listens, then nods, then offers them support in the form of a gentle loan. They leave with gratitude. Their future feels brighter, more reachable. Debt becomes part of the warmth of life, part of the way communities grow and support each other. As you listen, notice how calm this history truly is. There is no rushing, no chaos. Debt simply evolves with human society, adjusting to new needs, expanding gently as people learn to trust one another at larger and larger scales. Take a slow breath here. Let it fill your chest, then soften out. Chapter 7. Paper Promises and the Quiet Rise of Modern Money. Before we begin, settle your body a little deeper. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let your jaw loosen, your hands soften, your breathing slow. You are drifting through history in the calmest way possible. And Chapter 7 brings us closer to the world we know today, but we will move through it quietly, without any noise or pressure. Tonight, imagine you are in a small workshop centuries ago, where early paper money is being created. The room is simple. Wooden beams overhead, a soft glow of sunlight sliding across a work table, sheets of paper drying on a line, each holding a promise written in gentle ink. These are among the first notes that represent value, replacing the heavy coins people once carried everywhere. Paper money did not appear suddenly. It arrived slowly, like a soft idea taking shape in the minds of merchants, rulers, and community leaders. They realized something simple. If a promise held value, then the object carrying that promise did not need to be heavy or difficult to move. It just needed to be clear and trustworthy. Picture a merchant walking into a shop with one of these early notes. The shopkeeper studies the paper for a moment, then nods calmly, accepting it with a quiet confidence. They are not excited, not anxious, simply content that the note represents something real. This simple trust becomes the foundation of modern money. As more people begin using these paper promises, life becomes a little easier. Farmers can trade crops without carrying sacks of coins. Travelers can move between towns without the weight of metal pressing at their side. Traders can cross borders with nothing but written notes tucked safely inside their cloaks. Money becomes lighter. Life becomes smoother. Debt becomes easier to measure and repay. The early banks, which once kept ledgers and stored coins, now take on a new role. They begin issuing these notes, each one representing stored value, and people grow comfortable with this system because it feels peaceful, organized, and safe. The notes become symbols of cooperation between communities. Imagine a banker handing a paper note to a customer. Their conversation is relaxed, almost rhythmic. The banker explains what the note represents. The customer nods, understanding completely. The exchange is gentle, thoughtful, and slow. These paper notes begin to shape everyday life. Shopkeepers raise their awnings each morning, knowing customers will bring the new money. Travelers pack lightly for their journeys. Farmers send their children to buy tools, knowing the notes will be accepted just as easily as grain or metal. Now imagine a town square. Birds glide overhead. People stroll between stalls. A baker slides warm loaves out of an oven, setting them near the window. A young artisan arranges pottery with quiet pride, and tucked inside pockets, satchels, and rolled cloth bundles are the new paper notes representing future repayment, future trade, future stability. Debt becomes woven even more gently into daily life. Instead of borrowing a bag of grain, someone might borrow a few notes. Instead of repaying with goods, they might repay with money earned through trade or labor. The system becomes smoother, more flexible, more human. Still, through all this change, the spirit behind debt remains the same. It is still a promise. It is still trust stretching softly from one moment to another. It is still neighbors helping neighbors, communities helping communities, and nations supporting their people through good seasons and challenging ones. As this new system spreads from town to town, from city to city, larger governments begin to recognize how useful these notes are. Rulers start issuing standardized versions, each carrying official seals or symbols. These seals give people confidence that the notes are real, that the promise behind them is supported by the entire nation. Imagine someone holding one of these official notes for the first time. They turn it slowly in their hands, feeling the texture, studying the design. There is something comforting about it, something stable, something reassuring. For many people, this was their first encounter with modern money, and it made life simpler and more peaceful. With standardized money in place, trade expands. Towns connect more easily. People begin traveling farther than ever before. Goods move across mountains, rivers, and oceans. And everywhere they go, the quiet system of promises follows them. Debt also becomes more structured. Governments borrow to build roads, support communities, and encourage new industries. Merchants borrow to fund long journeys. Families borrow to improve their homes or buy tools for their craft. In each case, debt becomes a bridge to the future, a soft way to turn possibility into reality. Imagine a family sitting at their wooden table in a warm, lamp-lit room. The father lays out a small collection of paper notes. The mother is planning repairs to their roof. Their children listen as they discuss a small loan from the local bank. Their tone is hopeful, calm, and measured. They do not fear the loan. They understand it. They trust the system. They trust themselves. And they trust the gentle pace at which life unfolds. Now close your eyes a little heavier and imagine another scene far away. A ship is preparing to leave a quiet harbor. Sailors move slowly, checking ropes and supplies. A merchant stands on the dock, holding a pouch of paper notes borrowed from a bank. These notes will help them purchase goods across the sea. The ocean breeze is cool and steady. The sky is soft and hazy. There is no rush, no stress, just a sense of steady purpose. Debt becomes part of the wind powering the ship. part of the hope guiding the merchant, part of the world connecting itself through trade and cooperation. As paper money spreads, economies become more connected. People from different regions begin to trust each other's notes. Different kingdoms accept each other's promises. Slowly, the world becomes smaller, more accessible. The idea of value becomes universal, understandable across cultures. Let your breathing slow even more here. Feel how gentle this shift is, how gradual, how natural. The birth of modern money is not a loud event. It is a whisper, a soft evolution, an unfolding of human trust over centuries. And debt, which once existed between neighbors, now becomes a global language spoken in quiet exchanges, recorded in ledgers, and symbolized by paper. This chapter brings us closer to the present, but the story remains peaceful, because at its heart, debt is still about people helping one another reach a better future. Take a deep breath in. Let it drift out slowly. Chapter 8. The quiet clockwork of interest and the flow of time. Before we begin this chapter, let yourself settle even deeper into comfort. Feel the mattress or chair beneath you. Let your breathing become slow and steady, like waves arriving at the shore in a quiet rhythm. You are drifting through history one gentle moment at a time. Tonight, we explore something that shapes nearly every loan, every promise, every piece of borrowed value in our world. Interest. Not the loud financial kind you may hear about today, but the early, simple idea that borrowing moves through time, that a promise stretches forward, living quietly in the days ahead. Imagine you are standing in a peaceful town square centuries ago. The sun is warm. Shadows are long. A small bank rests at the far side of the square, its windows open, letting in a soft breeze. Inside, a banker sits at a wooden desk, speaking to a farmer who needs a loan for new tools. Their voices are calm, steady, without urgency. The banker explains something gentle and reasonable. When the farmer repays the loan after the next harvest, they will add a little extra. That small extra portion is interest. But in this time, interest is not seen as pressure. It is seen as gratitude, a small thank you for the help received, a way of saying, you supported me during a moment when I needed it, and I will return your kindness with something more. Picture the farmer nodding slowly, understanding completely. There is no fear in their expression, just agreement, trust, and a shared sense of balance. Interest begins with this simple exchange, a recognition that borrowing allows one person to step forward now, and repayment allows the lender to step forward later. A quiet balance across time. Let your mind drift to another scene. A merchant preparing for a long journey sits with a banker in a dimly lit room. The banker offers a loan to buy goods from distant lands. The merchant agrees to repay a little more when they return, not because they must, but because it reflects the opportunity they have been given. Interest becomes a soft clock ticking in the background, not rushing, not pushing, just marking the connection between present and future. With interest, the world becomes more organized. Banks can lend more because they receive more in return. Communities grow because borrowing becomes sustainable. People plan not just for today, but for seasons ahead. Imagine a ledger open on a table. Ink marks showing small amounts of interest added to loans. Every number written slowly, carefully, without tension. The clerk understands that these numbers shape the movement of community life. They keep the bank healthy. They ensure that people who borrow can trust that the system will still exist next year and the year after that. Interest also encourages patience. Lenders wait calmly for repayment. Borrowers take time to build something meaningful before returning what they owe. This creates a rhythm in society, a gentle pulse, a balance of give and take. Now imagine the world growing more connected. Trade routes expand. Goods flow across seas and deserts. More people borrow, and more people lend. Interest becomes a universal language that everyone understands. A way to keep long-distance promises stable. In distant cities, bankers design interest rates to match the pace of life. Slow and manageable during peaceful times. Lower for farmers during poor harvests. Flexible for traders facing unpredictable journeys. Interest was shaped by compassion, not pressure. Borrowers were not expected to repay instantly. Everyone understood that life sometimes moves slowly. Sometimes storms interrupted journeys. Sometimes illness delayed work. Sometimes crops needed more time to grow. Banks and lenders listened to these realities and adjusted accordingly. Picture a banker sitting with a family who had borrowed money for their small shop. The family explains that trade was slow this month. The banker listens, nods softly, and adjusts their repayment schedule. The interest remains gentle, like a small ripple instead of a wave. This flexible understanding kept communities strong. Not because rules were rigid, but because people respected the natural pace of life. Interest also allowed governments to grow roads and support large projects. A ruler could borrow to build a new harbour or expand a marketplace, knowing that repayment would unfold slowly through taxes or trade revenue. Interest encouraged careful planning, long-term thinking, and steady progress. Now let your attention soften as you imagine interest not as a number, but as a rhythm. A slow, safe heartbeat moving through the economy. People borrow. They repay. Banks lend again. Communities expand. The cycle continues, gentle and predictable. Interest is not a storm. It is a calendar. A quiet arrangement between people who trust one another. As this idea becomes more accepted across regions, borrowing becomes common and comfortable. Merchants borrow without fear. Farmers borrow without shame. Families borrow out of hope, not desperation. The existence of fair interest turns debt into a tool that shapes futures rather than shadows them. Picture a peaceful evening in a growing town. Shops closing. Street lamps glowing softly. Homes settling into warmth and quiet. Inside the small bank, a ledger glows under lamplight. Columns of numbers, each one representing a promise moving toward the future. No pressure. Just gentle movement. The world growing in small steps through soft exchanges of trust. Let your breathing drift into the same rhythm. Easy, natural, slow. Chapter 9. The Debt That Never Sleeps. Before we begin this last chapter, take one slow breath. Let your shoulders drop just a little more. Let your jaw loosen. Let your eyes get heavy, even if they are already closed. You've followed this entire quiet journey, step by step, and now we move toward a peaceful ending together. As the world becomes more connected and promises stretch across oceans, something quietly comforting begins to take shape. People start realizing that debt, at its best, is not about burden. It is not about anxiety or pressure. It is simply a shared understanding, a way humans help each other move through time. Imagine a calm modern city just before sunrise. The streets are quiet. Lights glow in apartment windows like small lanterns. A few early workers walk slowly, holding warm cups of coffee. The world has not fully awakened yet. Inside a small office, a young person sits at a desk sorting through financial notes. They look calm, steady, and thoughtful. These notes come from businesses, families, neighbors, and friends. Each one is a promise. Some promises are new. Some have been around for years, but none of them feel heavy. They feel human. This young person understands something important. Debt continues because people believe in tomorrow. They trust that time allows things to grow, shift, and heal. They trust that cooperation moves the world forward in quiet, steady steps. Now imagine this person walking outside into the early morning air. The sky is changing colors. Soft blues melt into pinks and golds. A gentle breeze brushes the streets. Birds start waking up, their songs rising slowly like warm breath. The young person watches the sky for a moment and smiles. They know that somewhere across the ocean, people are also waking, also working, also honoring promises that link lives together. Debt, in its calmest form, has become part of the shared rhythm of human life. It helps build homes, start businesses, repair neighborhoods, support families, and create new paths. It helps nations prepare for future generations. It helps communities recover from difficult moments and move toward better days. And in this gentle view of the world, debt does not feel like a shadow. It feels like a bridge, a soft connection from one person to another, from one community to the next, from one country to the world beyond it. Take a slow breath in. Let it fall out naturally. Now imagine the world from above. Not an intense image, just a quiet one. Soft clouds drifting, oceans shimmering with peaceful light, and all the continents resting calmly beneath the sky. Invisible lines connect different places. Lines built from trust and time, written in ledgers, in memories, in hopes. These lines stretch gently like threads in a tapestry, a global fabric of support. Where once debt was a simple exchange between neighbors, it has grown into a shared system that quietly supports billions of people. A web that hums with cooperation. A network that continues even while the world sleeps. That is the final truth of this story. Debt never truly sleeps, but it also never rushes. It moves slowly, patiently, almost peacefully, traveling from one generation to another like a soft echo of human connection. And now, as this long, gentle journey comes to an end, let yourself settle deeper into your pillow. You have followed the story from the earliest handwritten promises to the global systems of today. Through every chapter, the world has moved toward more connection, more understanding, more shared purpose. Your mind can now let go of the details. Let them drift into the background, softer and softer, like a fading dream. You do not need to hold on to anything. You can simply rest. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts loosen. Let your body melt into whatever surface is supporting you. You're safe. You're calm. You are allowed to rest completely. If sleep is coming, let it come. If your eyes are heavy, let them stay closed. All you need to do is drift with the soft rhythm of your own breath. The story is complete. The world is quiet, and you can gently drift into sleep. Just float now, softly, slowly, peacefully. Good night.